Thursday morning, Melrose Mountain. We woke up to fog and rain, but in just an hour or so, the fog cleared off and the clouds broke and the sun is out and it's a gorgeous day out there. You may have noticed a little scruff on my face. Maybe you can see a little better when I turn one way or the other. Let's see if we can do that. Uh, they say not to shave in November for guys because it brings awareness to prostate cancer. And ladies wore pink all of the month of October. Now they're encouraging men not to shave for November to bring attention to prostate cancer, where it's the #1 killer amongst men. So if you haven't had your screening, guys, let me really encourage you. Your doctor can very painlessly draw a very small amount of blood and do a good check on your blood to see if there's any increase in your count of cells that indicate that you might have a prostate problem. And with a very simple physical exam can see if your prostate is increased in size. And I highly recommend it. It would take just a few minutes to do these things, and certainly is something that preventative medicine is a good thing. Well, what does it mean to love Jesus? What does it mean to appreciate Jesus? Jesus very often taught in parables, and the parables that he taught in usually had one central meaning. Now, many times pastors make 15 points out of a single sermon on a parable, but in most cases, Jesus only intended to drive home one important point. And in Luke chapter 7, verse 40, there is the parable of the two debtors. I believe that Jesus was trying to make one central point, and that is the appreciation of someone who has been a vile sinner who is forgiven versus somebody that's been a pretty good person that's been forgiven. Certainly, both people have the potential of loving Jesus greatly, and yet one will appreciate the forgiveness a whole lot more when he considers how much he's done that is inappropriate. I heard a story about a little boy and a little girl who were just kind of getting into that puppy love, that little crush kind of a mode. And the little girl said to the little boy, "Do you love me?" And the little boy said, "Of course I love you." And the little girl said, "How much?" And he said, "A whole bunch." And she said, "Would you be willing to die for me?" He thought for a minute and he says, "No, mine is an undying love." Well, listen to the parable from Luke chapter 7, verse 40. Jesus answered and said, "A moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they were unable to repay, he graciously forgave both their debts." Remember, one owed 500 while the other only owed 50. So which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, "I suppose the one who was forgiven more." And he said, "You have judged correctly." Well, again, I believe the potential of love is just as great for two people that have been forgiven. But I believe one has a greater appreciation for his forgiveness because he realizes how much has been forgiven. Certainly the appreciation that I have for Christ dying for me is great because I realize how many things I did. I was almost a Paul in opposing religion and standing off away from religion and doing all kinds of things that I knew were wrong. And yet my brother was a good person and a moral person, and he had less to be forgiven than I had. Nevertheless, the consequences are the same. Whether we have a lot of sin or a little bit of sin, we can either spend an eternity in heaven or hell. So we should all love him as much as we can possibly love him, regardless of how great our sin was. But I certainly appreciate the forgiveness that he gave me because of the greatness of my sin. Take a moment today. Think about the things that you did. Think about the things that you've done. And whether they be great or whether they be small, then consider how much you love him. You see, you should love him an awful lot, regardless of the amount of sin you've committed, because you have chosen to select him as your Savior. Therefore, instead of hell, which we all deserve, we receive heaven. That's an awful lot to be thankful for, isn't it? An awful lot of motivation for us to really love him. So I hope that you love him today. God bless you and have a great day.